Old Man's War. Old Man's War hash, won by John Scalzi. A birthday visit and a choice. John Perry stood solemnly by the grave, the cool breeze of the morning whispering through the cemetery. He was an old man now, 75, and the weight of his years seemed to press down on him as he stared at the simple stone that marked where his wife Kathy lay. "Happy birthday to me," he muttered, the irony not lost on him. He placed a single red rose on the grave, a tradition he had kept for years, each petal a testament to the enduring love and the shared life that still bloomed in his heart, despite her absence. As he turned to leave, a voice called out, "Hey, John, wait up." It was Harry, a fellow recruit who had decided to join the Colonial Defense Forces, CDF, on the same day. Harry approached with a brisk step, his silver hair catching the light, a contrast to his youthful, eager expression. "Thought I'd find you here," Harry said, catching up. "You okay?" John shrugged. "Just paying my respects. You know how it is." Harry nodded, his face etched with understanding. "I do. But today's a big day, isn't it? We're off to start something new." "Yeah," John replied, a hint of excitement creeping into his voice. "The CDF, can you believe it? At our age." They walked together, the path leading them away from the graves and towards the future. As they approached the enlistment center, they saw Jessie Gonzalez, another recruit, who was looking at her reflection in the window, adjusting her cap. "Ready to become young again?" Jessie asked with a grin as they approached. John chuckled. "I'll settle for not feeling like my bones are made of glass." Inside, they were greeted by the sight of advanced technology that seemed like something out of a science fiction novel. One particular device caught John's eye, a holographic projector displaying a rotating model of a starship, the very kind they might soon be serving on, a beacon of the new life that awaited them. Harry whistled. "Look at this place. It's like we're stepping into the future." Jessie's eyes were wide with wonder. "And to think we'll be part of it. Fighting in space, defending colonies." John felt a surge of purpose. This was it, the adventure he had been seeking. A chance to make the last years of his life count for something. More. As they sat together, waiting for their orientation to begin, John thought about Kathy. She had always encouraged him to live fully, to embrace every opportunity. He could almost hear her voice, urging him on. "You're doing the right thing, John," he whispered to himself. And with that, he stepped forward to begin his journey, leaving the memories of his past behind and embracing the unknown that lay ahead. The enlistment center buzzed with the energy of new recruits, all eager to embark on their own journeys, each with their own stories and motivations. John, with a newfound resolve, joined them, ready to write the next chapter of his life among the stars. Embracing a new life. The morning sun cast a golden hue over the barracks, signaling the start of another day of transformation for John Perry and his fellow recruits. The air was thick with anticipation and the musky scent of determination. Today they would push their new bodies to the limit, testing the boundaries of their physical and psychological endurance. John stood before the mirror examining his reflection. His once familiar features were now replaced by the chiseled contours of his enhanced body, flexing his arms and marveling at the sight. In the mess hall, the clatter of trays and the murmur of conversation filled the space as recruits gathered for breakfast. John joined Harry and Jessie at their usual table, where they exchanged knowing glances. "Ready for today's trials?" Jessie asked, his voice tinged with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "As ready as I'll ever be," John replied, taking a bite of his nutrient-dense meal. "But I can't help feeling like we've stepped into a whole new reality." Harry chuckled. "Considering we're about to leap through space, that's quite literal." Their banter was cut short as Lieutenant Colonel Higgy entered the room, his presence commanding immediate silence. "Today you will face challenges that will test your mettle," he announced. "Remember, your bodies are capable of more than you can imagine. Trust in your training, trust in each other." The recruits nodded, a collective sense of resolve washing over them. The training ground was a sprawling field of obstacles and combat simulations. John and his platoon navigated through the course with precision, scaling walls with ease, their enhanced muscles propelling them forward. During this simulated combat scenario, John found himself pinned down by enemy fire. "Cover me," he shouted to Alan, who was positioned nearby. "On it!" Alan responded, laying down suppressive fire as John rolled to safety. As the day progressed, the physical exertion took its toll. Sweat dripped from their brows, and their breaths came in heavy gasps. Yet, they persevered, driven by a newfound sense of purpose. The trials culminated in a martial arts battle, where John faced off against a recruit twice his size. The two circled each other, looking for an opening. With a swift move, John executed a takedown, leveraging his opponent's momentum against him. The crowd erupted in cheers as John stood victorious. Exhausted but exhilarated, the recruits gathered around Lieutenant Colonel Higgy. "Today you've proven yourselves worthy of the CDF," he said, pride evident in his voice. "But remember, this is just the beginning." As night fell, John lay in his bunk, reflecting on the day's events. The absence of Maggie, their former roommate, cast a shadow over the barracks. Her sudden departure after the incident at his door was a stark reminder of the personal costs of their journey. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, there was a glimmer of hope, a chance to embrace this new life and the adventures it promised. Harry's voice broke the silence. "Hey, John, you awake?" "Yeah," John replied, turning to face him. "I've been thinking about that message I received," Harry continued, his voice a mix of curiosity and hope. "It's strange, but it feels like a sign, you know? Maybe there's a chance for something more, something beyond this war." John nodded, understanding the weight of Harry's words. "Life has a funny way of surprising us," he said softly. "Maybe it's the universe's way of telling you not to give up on the things that matter most." Harry smiled faintly, the glint of a tear visible in the dim light. "Yeah, maybe you're right, John. Maybe there's still a chance for a new beginning." The two lay in silence, lost in their thoughts as the stars twinkled outside their window, a silent testament to the vastness of the journey. Forging a resilient family. The recruits of the Colonial Defense Forces, a diverse group united by their desire to serve and protect, faced the daunting task of transforming into soldiers under the watchful eyes of Lieutenant Colonel Higgy and Master Sergeant Ruiz. Higgy, with his no-nonsense approach, made it clear that their personal lives were now on hold. "You are soldiers," he declared, "and the CDF demands your full commitment." Master Sergeant Ruiz, a familiar figure to the recruits, added his own brand of motivation. "I expect nothing less than your best," he warned. "Prove to me that you have what it takes to be here." Platoon leader Perry, or John as he preferred to be called, had earned his leadership role through his ability to inspire. He understood the importance of unity and worked to forge the recruits into a tight-knit family. "We will face challenges that will test our limits," he told them. "But together we will become the best soldiers the CDF has ever seen." The recruits quickly learned that their training would push them beyond their physical and mental limits. They faced challenges that demanded every ounce of their strength and endurance. One such challenge involved an underwater exercise that tested their mental fortitude. As they struggled to hold their breath for extended periods, the squad leaders and teammates supported each other, demonstrating the power of their growing bonds. John's leadership skills shone through as he tailored his approach to each individual recruit. He understood their fears and hopes, offering motivation and guidance when needed. His ability to paint pictures with his words helped the recruits visualize their potential and strive for excellence. As the training progressed, the recruits transformed into a cohesive unit, ready to take on any challenge. They had become a resilient family, united under John's guidance. Their laughter and shared struggles had forged unbreakable bonds, and they knew that together they could face whatever lay ahead in their mission to protect humanity's future among the stars. The days continued to unfold with new challenges that not only tested the recruits' physical prowess, but also their strategic thinking and adaptability. They were introduced to simulated combat scenarios that required quick decision-making and teamwork. The recruits had to navigate through complex digital battlegrounds where virtual enemies and unpredictable elements awaited them at every turn. This was a departure from their previous training, focusing on individual strength and endurance, and it demanded a higher level of coordination and trust among them. Master Sergeant Ruiz, ever present, monitored their progress, offering sharp critiques and invaluable insights. His role as a mentor became more pronounced as he guided the recruits through these virtual trials, helping them to analyze their tactics and improve their performance. John, observing the transformation of his platoon, felt a surge of pride. The recruits were no longer just individuals with impressive backgrounds. They had become a unit with a shared vision. Their interactions had evolved from mere camaraderie to a deeper understanding of each other's strengths and weaknesses, allowing them to function as a single entity. As the final weeks of training approached, the recruits were subjected to their most grueling test yet, a full-scale mock battle against a seasoned enemy force. It was here that their resilience was truly put to the test. The battle was intense and chaotic, but facing innate fears. The training room was abuzz with nervous energy as the recruits, clad in their sleek black uniforms, gathered around the simulation pool. John Perry stood at the edge, his gaze fixed on the water that shimmered with a holographic glow. Beside him, Alan Rosenthal, his second-in-command, clapped him on the shoulder. "You ready for this, Perry?" Alan asked, his voice steady despite the palpable tension. John nodded, his resolve firm. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied. John stepped forward and the simulation began. The water transformed into a vast ocean, waves crashing around them. John and his platoon were immediately thrust into their personal scenarios, each engaging in a unique challenge. Jesse Gonzalez faced a swarm of alien creatures, dispatching them with swift, precise movements. Harry was immersed in a strategic duel with a holographic enemy, his focus unwavering. As the simulation progressed, John's platoon utilized their brainpower to adapt and communicate, their coordination seamless. They emerged from the simulation having faced significant trials, their camaraderie strengthened by the shared experience. In the debriefing room, the recruits exchanged looks of mutual respect, acknowledging the growth they had achieved through the exercise. With a nod from their superiors, they prepared to move forward, their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that they could confront and conquer their deepest fears. The simulation had been a test of their mental fortitude, and they had emerged not just unscathed, but empowered. As they filed out of the debriefing room, there was a silent promise among them, an unyielding resolve to face the future, not as individuals, but as a unified force. The brutality of war. The air was thick with tension as John Perry's platoon prepared for what was to come. They were no strangers to the harsh realities of war, but today was different. Today they would execute a decisive strike against the Wadians, which could spell disaster for them all. "Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves," John said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "We're fighting for those who can't fight for themselves." Jesse nodded, his expression grim. "We've trained for this, John. We're ready." Harry, usually the more vocal of the two, remained silent, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He knew the cost of war all too well, having seen friends fall one by one. But he also knew the importance of their mission. As they moved into position, the platoon was a symphony of precision and focus. Each member knew their role. They were more than soldiers. They were guardians of peace, defenders of the innocent. The Wadians were formidable, their tactics ruthless. But Perry's platoon had something they didn't. A bond forged in the fires of adversity, a unity that made them unbreakable. The battle raged on, the sound of gunfire and the cries of the fallen filling the air. John led his platoon with unwavering resolve, his brain power relaying information at the speed of thought. "We need to disrupt their mining operations," John commanded, his eyes scanning the battlefield. "Hit their troop transports. We can't let them bring in reinforcements." Jesse and Harry moved with purpose, their enhanced bodies allowing them to maneuver with ease. As the platoon executed their plan, they drew the Ray's big guns out of coral orbit, creating an opening for their reinforcements. It was a risky move, one that could leave them stranded, but they were willing to take that chance. In the midst of the chaos, John couldn't help but think of Jane, the soldier created from his late wife's DNA. She was out there somewhere fighting her own battles. He hoped she was safe. The strike against the Wadians was swift and brutal. John's platoon fought with a ferocity that belied their human origins. They were no longer just men and women. They were warriors of the CDF, champions of a cause greater than themselves. As the dust settled, John looked around at his platoon. They were battered but not broken. They had faced the brutality of war and emerged victorious. "We did it," Harry said, a rare smile breaking through his stoic facade. "We did," John agreed. "There's still a long road ahead." Together, they turned their gaze to the stars, knowing that the war was far from over. The chapter closes with the platoon regrouping, their spirits lifted by the victory but weighed down by the knowledge that many more challenges lay ahead. They were ready to face whatever came their way, united by their shared experiences and the unspoken bond that made them family. Ethical dilemmas and personal stakes. John Perry sat quietly in the mess hall, his food untouched. Across from him, Alan, Harry, Jesse, and the other young Special Forces soldiers chatted animatedly, their faces alight with the vigor of youth. John couldn't help but feel a pang of discomfort at the sight of these soldiers, their innocence juxtaposed with the brutal reality of war. "Hey, Perry, you've been quiet," Alan remarked, sliding into the seat next to him. "Something on your mind?" John sighed. "It's just this war, Alan. It doesn't sit right with me." Alan nodded solemnly. "War is a dirty business, Perry. But we're here to protect humanity, even if it means making tough choices." Their conversation was interrupted by Jane Sagan's approach. Her gaze was intense, her voice low as she spoke to John. "Perry, in the briefing later, just agree to what they ask. It's the only way to keep us all safe from the impending threat." John's brow furrowed in confusion. "What threat, Jane? What aren't you telling me?" Before Jane could reply, General Keegan and other high-ranking officials entered the mess hall, announcing the start of the briefing. The room fell silent, and John knew that the briefing would reveal more about the danger they faced. As they walked towards the briefing room, John couldn't shake off the feeling that the ethical dilemmas they faced were just as formidable as any enemy they would encounter in battle. The use of DNA to create new bodies, like Jane's, raised questions about identity and humanity. And now, with the threat of danger looming, John wondered what other challenges lay ahead. The briefing began, and General Keegan commended John for his actions during the Battle of Coral, particularly for his leadership and quick thinking in a challenging situation. However, John's attention was drawn to Jane's warning, and he couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. The briefing continued, with discussions about the mission preparation and the integration of Special Forces soldiers, including the young troops. John knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he was determined to face them head-on, alongside his fellow soldiers. As the briefing continued, John's mind wandered back to the conversation with Jane and the implications of using DNA to create new bodies. He glanced at Jane, who was standing at attention, her eyes fixed on the general. John wondered what she knew about the impending threat, and why she was so adamant that he agree to whatever was asked of him. The general's voice brought John back to the present. "Corporal Perry, your actions during the Battle of Coral have not gone unnoticed. We're considering decorating you for your bravery." John felt a mix of emotions, pride, guilt, and unease. He didn't feel like a hero, and the thought of being decorated for his actions made him uncomfortable. As the briefing drew to a close, John knew that he had to confront Jane about the danger she had alluded to. He made his way towards her, his heart pounding in his chest. "Jane, what's going on?" he asked, his voice low. "What's this threat you're talking about?" Jane's eyes darted around the room before she leaned in close. "I'll tell you later, John. But trust me, you need to be careful. They're watching us, and they won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to achieve their goals." John's mind raced with questions, but before he could ask any, Jane turned and walked away, leaving him with more uncertainty and fear than ever. A perilous mission and personal redemption. John Perry stood at the helm of the Sparrowhawk, his gaze locked on the distant Ray Command Center, the hub of the enemy's tracking capabilities. The air was charged with tension, and the low hum of the ship's engines served as a constant reminder of the perilous mission ahead. "All right, team," John began, his voice steady. "This is it. The mission we've been training for. The Ray Command Center integrates tracking data from satellites, coordinating attacks against us. Taking it down will blind their fleet and give us the chance we need. We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every soul back home." Jesse Gonzalez, his trusted friend, nodded in agreement. "We've got your back, John. We'll follow your lead." John turned to Jane Sagan, whose presence was both a comfort and a reminder of what he had lost. "Jane, I need you on the ground with me. Your skills are crucial for this operation." Jane met his gaze, her expression resolute. "I'm ready, John. Let's bring them down." The team prepared for the drop, each member checking their gear with meticulous care. They were more than a unit. They were a family, bound by a shared purpose. The thought of failing each other was unthinkable, far worse than any enemy they faced. As they neared the drop zone, John's brainpal signaled transmission tower in sight. "Prepare for descent." They deployed their parasails, descending through the night with ghostly silence. The moment their boots touched the ground, the quiet was broken by the unexpected roar of gunfire. "Now!" John shouted, and the platoon sprang into action. They moved with precision, their enhanced bodies responding with supernatural speed and strength. Caught off guard, the Ray soldiers faltered, their overconfidence their undoing. John led the charge, his rifle blazing as he took down one enemy after another. The Ray counterattacked fiercely, their airships unleashing a barrage from above. "Hold the line," John commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. Then disaster struck. A rock fragment hit Jane and she fell, motionless. John's heart raced as he carried her to the stasis chamber inside the deserted command center infirmary. The machine whirred to life, stabilizing her condition. With Jane safe, John refocused on the mission. The tracking station had to be taken offline. He rallied his troops, and together they fought back the Ray with unyielding resolve. The battle raged, but John's platoon was relentless. They were warriors, fighting for a future they believed in. As the colonial fleet arrived, signaling the mission's success, John allowed himself a moment of relief. They had struck a critical blow against the R-Ray, and in doing so, John had found a measure of personal redemption. He looked at Jane, her face peaceful in the stasis chamber, and whispered, "We'll get through this together." As the dust settled and the sounds of battle faded, John and his platoon knew that their victory was but a moment in the larger conflict. The war for humanity's future was far from over, but for now they had won a crucial battle, and that was enough to keep the flame of hope alive. A message of hope and self-discovery. Harry stood silently at his wife's grave, the cool breeze carrying whispers of the past. The cemetery was a quiet place where memories lingered like the morning fog. He had come here often since she passed, each visit a silent conversation with her memory. As he turned to leave, a pang of longing washed over him. He paused, reflecting on the years of war and duty that had shaped him, the love he had lost, and the uncertain future that lay ahead. It was in this moment of reflection that his communicator buzzed with an incoming message. The screen flickered to life, revealing an image that took his breath away. A field of golden grain, a farmhouse in the distance, and the first light of sunrise painting the sky. The voice accompanying the picture was unmistakable, yet impossible. It was Jane's voice, carrying the cadence of his late wife's speech, a soldier who shared a part of his wife's soul. "Harry," the voice began, soft and familiar. "There's a place for soldiers like us, a place beyond the battlefield. I want you to find it, to find me." Harry's heart raced with a mix of emotions. Could it be? Was it possible she was out there, waiting for him? The message continued. "Our paths haven't crossed again, but I believe they will soon. Come to me when you're ready. I'll be here waiting." Harry looked back at the grave, his mind a whirlwind of doubt and possibility. The message, though from Jane, carried the essence of Catherine, blurring the lines between the past and the present. He wrestled with the emotions it stirred, the ache of loss, and the spark of a new, albeit complex, connection. It was a call to action, a beacon in the solitude of his grief. With the typo corrected, the message now read clearly. The adventure awaited, signifying the start of a new chapter in his life. Harry took a deep breath, allowing himself to feel the full weight of the decision before him. This wasn't just a journey to find Jane. It was a step towards healing the scars left by years of conflict. He finally allowed himself to believe in the possibility of a future where he could embrace the parts of Catherine that lived on in Jane. With a resolve strengthened by the promise of what lay ahead, Harry stepped out of the shadows of the past and into the light of a new dawn. The adventure awaited indeed, full of the unknown and the potential for redemption.